Welcome one more day to space in Harmonia, an opportunity to discover ourselves deeply, remembering the connections in the tree of lives, our true origin. And what a better place than this to speak about these things, because a tree is very much a representation of what grows from the primordial spheres. And as we saw, we come from a tree, a divine tree, that has branches in which there are twigs that give birth to different soul leaves, so to say. We all are a family in the tree of life, but some souls have more affinities than others because they belong to the same family, the same branch, or even to the same twig. Those are called twin souls. In some cases, the twin souls are a perfect mirror of each other. That's why they are called twins. Obviously, the notion of twin soul can be used in different ways depending on the view we are holding. And there is also another notion known as the divine twin, known since ancient times. But as we will see today, there can be different spiritual natures that can play the role of divine twin. It's not the same to be guided by the spirit of life that manifests the true master of life, the Messiah, the universal intelligence, so to say, and other types of intelligence that, being very high, can still be trapped in the world, even though they manifest a profound spiritual nature. So we'll see the true divine twin that must be our spiritual husband, so to say, our master, inner guide, and how that's related to the divine verb, the Yud He Vav He. There is a profound teaching contained in the Hebrew letters Yud He Vav He, because they represent the union of masculine and feminine. Now, before going into that, I would like to comment on things people have asked. A woman was asking about something Paul said. She wondered how it's possible that Paul said that it's better for man to be alone, when he also said there is no man without woman, nor woman without man in the Messiah, in the Master, as we read in 1 Corinthians 11:11, a number which is an expression of twin soulship. And I don't think Paul was saying it's better for man to be completely alone. In 1 Corinthians 7, he said that obviously if a man is not engaged and does not feel the urge to form a family, it's better to continue the spiritual path, and obviously he must work with others or even have a companion, a partner from the opposite sex. Why not? Actually, there is a very high type of spiritual relation in which twin souls can work together without forming a family. He said it's better for man not to touch a woman when there is a high aspiration, because when you form a family, obviously you have to take care of your kids, and this can be a distraction because other problems can come. And it doesn't mean it's bad to have kids. Obviously, there are people who are meant to have kids and form a family to learn, to understand deeper certain connections. But this is not for everyone. Actually, I don't think Paul was saying something new. In the New Testament, you also find the passage in which the Messiah speaks about the spiritual eunuch. Notice that the eunuch was a man that was castrated in the court, so he didn't have relationship with people from the royalty or servants within the royalty, and those eunuchs were usually castrated. Now, the Messiah was not referring to a physical eunuch, but to a spiritual eunuch, which is a man that doesn't need to spend part of his spiritual energy in forming a family, a man or a woman. And this means that person has such a strong inclination towards the divine that can focus all the creative energy in building up something deeper. But very few are called to carry out that type of divine task on earth. But as he said, if you can receive that, go for it. If you are strong enough to understand who you are and what's your purpose on earth, then use your creative energies to inspire the world, to guide others. Actually, some people can use their creative energy in sublime ways without the need of getting involved in sexual relationships as they are commonly understood in human affairs. Therefore, the question of being alone doesn't have to do with being alone literally. You can be with a partner. Actually, Paul didn't work alone. He had helpers, and one of them was a famous woman. She was Thecla. Actually, her faith was awakened when she saw Paul speaking about the Messiah. So she became one of the most important female leaders in the early congregation. I won't say church because the concept of church came later. It comes from Circe, the goddess Circe, that keeps people in a circle. Kirk is circle in Greek. And the congregation, ecclesia, was the congregation of the call-out ones, those who have divine conscience within. And there were women that took some leadership, something the church didn't like. And this is why most of the references to Thecla and other women in the past were erased. But in the New Testament you can find Thecla. And there is a depiction of Paul with Thecla in the region of Ephesus. But as you can see, it was destroyed by the iconoclasts, those who didn't like certain images and they destroyed them. And who knows, maybe Thecla was a kind of twin soul of Apostle Paul. It is usually said that behind every great man there is a great woman, and vice versa, why not? So there is a reciprocity. The world would be very different if men and women could work together in harmonia, following the principle of the tree of life, remembering who they are. But as people get together whimsically, moved by selfish desires, this is very difficult. So we have to be attuned to our divine inner twin first, because we have a spiritual self that must be our true guide and a spiritual husband, as it was known in ancient times. And this is a teaching that you can find in the book of John, chapter 4, in the New Testament. When the Samaritan woman goes to take water from Jacob's well, she finds Isho, Yeshua, sitting beside the well, and he asks, "Give me water, woman." And she says, "How, being a Jewish man, you ask for water to a woman. And he said, if you really knew what the divine gift is, then you would be asking for water to the one who is asking you for water. And she said, you don't have anything to take up water. Then he said, the waters from Jacob's well don't quench the thirst, but I have some living waters that will quench your thirst forever. And she said, I want from those waters. So he said, call your husband. I don't have, she said. And Isha said, of course, you had 5 husbands and none of them was your real husband, and the one you have now is not your husband either. So she was surprised. You must be a prophet, she said. And he explained to her that to know the divine is the key to access the living waters. You, the Samaritans, worship what you don't know. Because she said that in that mount they have been worshipping God for ages. And he said that there would come a time in which they would worship the Father, but not in that mount, nor in Jerusalem. Nowhere. Because he said, we worship what we know. Because salvation comes from, and they translate the Jews, but it doesn't say Jews. Yehudim in Hebrew means those who are a door for the divine verb. Yehudim comes from Yehuda, which is the tetragrammaton with a dalet, a letter dalet, which represents delet, door. Therefore, when you become a door to the divine intelligence of the tree of life, which comes from the Father, then the masculine and feminine energies within yourself are in harmony, and you become a source of divine love, divine life, abundance, the living waters. So it's a divine marriage within what brings harmony and abundance outside as well. Therefore, we have to understand what's this union of our human soul with the spirit of life, which is, if you wish, our true husband, represented by the Messiah. It doesn't mean we are marrying a man that lived 2,000 years ago, or even marrying a God that existed 2,000 years ago and went to heaven. No, each one of us has a spirit of life that belongs to the collective body of the Messiah. Because when the Messiah was fully manifested on earth, he became the head of a collective body. And when he ascended back to the Father, to the primordial origin beyond time and space, then he transmitted his human life to all the spirits that were contained in the womb, the bosom of the Father. Therefore, each one of those spirits are like spiritual husbands waiting to connect with human souls and rescue them, bringing them back to the tree of life. This was known as the divine marriage. Now, in the process of connection, the soul gets purified. So there is a new soul generated. This is the divine birth of the soul. But then we must be born from the Spirit fully, leaving this world. Here we live as souls in a physical body, and as we have been seeing, we also experience a process of soul birth, the birth pangs of the soul being born in a body. But having crossed the waters of existence, we must be born from the Spirit fully as well. We can start being born from the Spirit on earth, but very few have accomplished the full birth of a Spirit on earth. I think Master Yeshua was able to, accomplish that full birth of a spirit on earth, because he was meant to lead the way. So in a sense, he showed the pattern of marriage with our spiritual nature. Therefore, we have to marry soul and spirit. And this is the union that takes place in the so-called bridal chamber, as it was known in some Gospels, the Gospel of Philip, for instance. And this union is not just with a soul or a spirit, which is also possible. Actually, if you notice, in some ancient teachings, the husband is the solar spirit, the solar mental body, which is represented by different characters. In the Torah, for instance, the solar soul is represented by Jacob, which corresponds to the sphere of Tifereth, beauty. And he marries the soul which is waiting in Malkut and is raised to Yesod, where the union takes place. The sun and the moon unite. This was the symbolism. But I think that in those cases, they were representing the union of a solar soul that has a mental body, therefore a body that comes from the sun, and a soul that has a lower garment, an earthly garment. Energies coming from the earth, the moon. So, if part of the soul was trapped in physical bodies, it was rescued by Jacob, the soul that is connected to the sphere of the sun. But the Messiah went beyond the sphere of the sun, even beyond the sphere of the stars as we see them, because he comes from the primordial universe, the absolute sun, and we are meant to cross the universe, transcending even the emotional astral planetary body, the mental astral body. Remember how in previous videos I explained that we can develop a planetary astral body, a solar astral body that has a mind or a consciousness coming from the sun, then a spiritual body that connects us to the galaxies. But we are given a primordial body, which is sidereal. It comes from beyond the sphere of the stars, and is something that is given to us as a gift, a divine gift, which is what takes us out from the system of the Ouroboros. Therefore, we have to understand what the true divine marriage is. Because even having a solar mental body, we can get trapped. We can get into the cycle of repetitions. Actually, in ancient times, there were solar masters that had many different lives. For instance, Pythagoras was said to be an incarnation of Apollo, which is a solar deity symbol. Therefore, he probably had a solar mental body. He was very intelligent, just as many other masters. But the solar mental body is not enough, because it can get still deceived by the world. Actually, I think Prometheus, the nature of first Adam, was solar in nature to some extent, and it became Luciferic when it fell. So we have to transcend the bonds of the universe by allowing in our heart a love which comes from beyond the stars. And the Messiah said once, "What you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and what you loosen on earth shall be loosened in heaven. This means that whatever you do on earth has a correspondence with something in the heavens, even in the stars. And some souls are bound to certain spirits from the stars. But as I said, true liberation does not come with the union of a solar spirit and a soul on earth, but with the union of the spirit of life that goes beyond the sun, the earth, the planets. I'm not saying solar consciousness is not necessary. We need solar consciousness to understand all this. Obviously, if you are listening to me, it's because something in you is asking for understanding, and this comes from the sun. Solar consciousness is what gives certain understanding, the neshama, the breath of understanding, which is the breath given to Adam. He became a nefesh chaya. As I said, his intelligence partially came from the sun and other star bodies, but it became fragmented in humanity. So now we have to go back to the primordial universe, and this implies cutting all the threads that keep us bound to the earth and to the stars. Today people speak about star seeds because many souls come from the stars, but they can still be deceived, caught up in this world. It was the case of Lucifer. It was an astral type of intelligence that fell and became an opposition to the divine marriage. And notice how in the Tetragrammaton, the Yud He Vav He, the divine verb, there is a code of union. When you spell the Tetragrammaton, Yud Vav Dalet, He, Aleph, and so on, then you sum up all the geometric values of the letters and you get 45, which is the value of Adam. And when you sum up the so-called belly of the Tetragrammaton in that spelling, the inner letters, then you get 19, which is the value of Hava, Eve. Therefore, the Tetragrammaton is indicating the union of Adam and Hava, which became separated because of the division when they fell to the earth. Hava was the body of Adam, the collective body where the consciousness called Adam was incarnated. And in the beginning, Hava, Eve, was a collective psyche of life which was not fully identified with the physical world, but she married the serpent, the consciousness of the earth, and therefore that psyche was hijacked, even though in the beginning she was full of life, Chaya. This is why Adam was a Nefesh Chaya. Adam was an intelligence married to life, but that intelligence lost the life because of the identification with this deceptive world. So we have to be married to life back again, and this is not possible without a deeper understanding, which is what the Messiah brought. Actually, in Hebrew, Messiah is called Mashiach, which is a permutation of Yesh Moach, there is brain, there is understanding, and also Simcha, joy. Most of these codes are ignored by Jewish people who believe they have to follow external commandments. They keep ignoring or denying that 2,000 years ago the head of the Messiah came. And he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So we have to follow that way in order to marry with our divine twin. which is no longer the solar spirit of the ancient teachings. Even in Manichaeism, they speak of the divine twin. Mani, the prophet that founded the religion Manichaeism, said that we have a divine twin, a divine nature in the stars. But as I said, that's not our true spiritual husband. Our true spiritual husband is the true Messiah, one atom in the body of the spiritual Messiah. So I'm referring to the true Messiah because there are other messiahs that belong to the sphere of the earth and the astral planes. There can be other anointed ones, but anointed with what? With which spirit they are anointed? Even the Master said that there would come a time in which the bridegroom would be taken away from those who follow him. He was referring to the bridegroom, not to the husband, because first there is a relationship in which we must get familiar with our true spiritual future husband, so to say, which is our true self. And the marriage comes after we have been in a long relationship of soul and spirit. And obviously, when we lose the contact with our bridegroom, we must do something. Actually, he said that when the bridegroom was taken away from his followers, they would fast from the world, as he said. We must stop contaminating our heart and our mind with the fallen impressions of this world that come from violent movies, the chaos from the media in general. We have to feed our heart and our mind with true food, as these teachings. Very few people are able to follow what I'm saying because most people are dead. They don't have life. Therefore, they cannot understand not even a tiny part of what I'm saying. So if you are following this message, consider yourself very fortunate because you are one of those exceptions out there. And as an exception, you need to be exceptional. You need to marry your true self, your true divine self, which is the spirit of life, a divine intelligence that can guide you, and is not separate. It's part of the divine tree of life, it's part of the collective body of the Messiah, and is what we really are in a profound way. Therefore, we have to be very careful about what we put in our heart and our mind and what we do, because as the Master said, what you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. All we do can connect us to karmic cycles ruled by the movement of the planets, the stars, and this is something that must be transcended. That's even in the code of Israel. Jacob, the soul of Tifereth, struggled with the angel, with the Malak, which represents the movement of the planets and the stars, the Elohim, the forces of nature, and he was given the name of Israel, that comes from Yashar El, effort or struggle towards El. El is the force of the planets, associated to Hesed, mercy, expansiveness, but also to other energies. Actually, Israel can be seen as conquering the energies from the moon, Isis, the sun, Ra, and the planets, El. El is connected to electricity. In the Sephirotic tree, El is connected to the sphere of Hesed, Jupiter. The sun is connected to Tifereth, and Mars is connected to Geburah. Then Saturn to Binah, Venus to Netzach, Mercury to Od, and the moon to Yesod. All those are the forces that must be harmonized and thus overcome. Because if we are not in harmony inside, those forces can be very negative, even though sometimes they can play a positive role. Venus in us can be a force, a desire, but if it's not sublimated by the sun, it's destructive. It's full of selfishness, just as sexuality, which is associated with the moon. There is nothing wrong with that energy, but if it's not sublimated by the understanding brought by divine consciousness in ourselves, it becomes destructive. And all the chaos we see on Earth is run by the energies of the planets, the sun, the moon, without harmony. So we must develop within so that we can marry our true spirit of life, gain understanding, and live in harmony, even with others. And having said this, thank you very much for listening with attention. Give thumbs up if this was inspiring to you. Subscribe, click on the bell to receive weekly notifications. Remember, these videos come in Spanish and English. And meanwhile, let's keep cleaning the mind and the heart to unite with our true spiritual nature, our true spiritual husband, so we can be fully born from the spirit and be guided on earth, meeting those we have to meet in order to work to accomplish our mission, even to manifest that inner marriage outside, finding some inspiring partner. Why not? This is not a question of walking alone. We cannot do anything fully alone. We need help from others, and especially from the true spirit of life, the intelligence of the universe. So let's keep opening that heart to manifest the primordial love and modified life, integral conscience, and deep, blissful serenity.